Okay, yeah. So this is what we're doing today. Went to Walmart and picked up this yard of fabric in their fabric department. This stuff is $5 a yard, $4.97 a yard, and this project's going to take just about a yard to finish. Some of the recess holes that I have, like here, they're going to be. I'll cover over them at first, and then I'm going to splice that hole, and I'll lay it down into the inset a little bit, and then I'm going to take another separate piece and stuff it in each of the holes to kind of make them a little bit more seamless. It's going to be almost impossible to get this all the way down in there perfectly with this cloth. If it was fleece, it'd be a little bit different, but I didn't really want the fleece look. I wanted the clean look of the cloth. So you can see what it looks like when it's done. It should look pretty cool with just like the comic pattern. So that's pretty much where we're at right now. So okay, yeah. So we've given it a few minutes to dry. I'm going to start pressing it together now. Just going to lay it over. And we're going to start from here. Start pressing it in. So while I'm doing this little pressing job here, I wanted to start with a little bit of a story. As a lot of you probably know, my father passed away when I was around 21, and kind of wanted to share some of that experience with you all. Around that age, I was working at Pizza Hut. I was a manager, and I remember there was a time where my dad was not really doing well, and he'd had a couple other aneurysms due to, we're not sure. We always thought everything that had an effect on his life at that time was due to drugs and alcohol. My dad was a heavy drinker, and it was really no secret to that many people that he liked his alcohol. And he had taken a little bit of a trip to Betty Ford to try and get that under control, but it really wasn't all that successful because he almost got right back to it when he got out of rehab. And we'd tried to give some warning to some other family members, but it's really difficult back in that time because of course there wasn't any social media or anything like that. He had been in and out of the hospital a couple times, and I remember the day that he got back from the hospital, his friends took him for a little party, and they all got high and drunk, and I guess that's kind of what you do when you're around that kind of a crowd. But I always kind of thought that was pretty bad for his so-called friends to be doing that kind of thing with him right after he got out of the hospital for a brain aneurysm, where they knew that doing drugs and that kind of stuff wasn't really going to be good for his health. But I mean, you have your friends, and you have those situations that your friends put you into, and you don't think much of it at the time, and of course you go along with it for the most part, and everybody goes about their way, and it's not really a big thing that you think too much about. But so anyway, the second time that he went in the hospital for aneurysms, I was working at Pizza Hut, and I remember I'd gone up to the hospital several times and seen him. I think he was out in, I want to say DePaul, but I don't really remember. I think it was off 270, but really bad with directions. So, but anyway, I'd gone out there a couple times to see him, and the time in particular that I'm referencing now was the time that he was in for the second time. And when I called him from Pizza Hut, and I told him that, and he was in the hospital at the time, and I told him that I was going to come up and see him that weekend, that I was working, and I was, it was the weekend for Pizza Hut, and it was pretty busy for us. So after the weekend shifts that I had, I was going to come up there and visit with him, and bring him some food and whatever. And when I went home that Friday night, my uncle called me and told me that my dad had passed away. And so, I mean, of course you get that feeling like you should have, maybe paused your life for your father. But I really did think that he was going to be okay, because he'd been in that kind of a situation before recently, and I thought, that's my dad, he's going to live forever and he'll be fine, and I'll go see him when I get done working these shifts at the hut. So yeah, that's one of those regret kind of things I have. But that whole time was really difficult for me, because when they decided to plan the funeral, that funeral happened on my 21st birthday. So now, I recently did a post on my Facebook page about, I wanted to sing the song Blind Melon Change. And I wanted to do that for my dad, because I really did think that that message would have been good for him to hear. When life is hard, you have to change, and people see you in the way that you live, and they just think they'll never live that way, or they think that could never, those kind of things could never happen to them. And it really does become an unfortunate thing when actually it does happen to you. And I remember when they called me and told me when the funeral arrangements were, and I had said, he said, we're going to have the funeral on the 20th, and I said, well, that's my birthday. And I remember thinking it was like a week after he had died, so I didn't really think it was necessary to have it on that day. But I mean, I was a kid, I didn't have the, I wasn't involved in the planning of all that, and that was pretty much up to my grandmother and that side of the family, because they're the ones that had money. We didn't have money, a lot of money, my dad, and so it wasn't like he was prepared for dying with a hefty funeral arrangements or anything like that. So all that planning was left up to my grandmother, my the other side of that family. Like I said, the side of the family that he was on. Of course, my mom didn't have anything to do with it. She was told that she couldn't go to the funeral. There was a lot of animosity between that side of the family and my mom whenever they got divorced, and I didn't really ever get too much into that, all that kind of drama. I just was really pretty crushed at the fact that that funeral was going to be on my birthday. Okay, so we're starting to get this laid down a little bit better here, and I'm pretty much just working the flat sections right now, and I'm trying to get some of the wrinkles out. There was a pretty bad wrinkle in this area over here. When my dad's funeral finally went, we went through with the arrangements and everything. Of course, my brother and I we wanted to be pallbearers and carry the casket down, and we were told that we couldn't do that. That it was a military funeral, and there wouldn't be any specialized pallbearers. It was just the military was going to be the only ones that were going to be carrying him down. So you can imagine my disappointment and shock when in walks my dad's coffin with military members carrying it down, but also the same people that took him home and got him high and drunk from the hospital were the ones that were carrying him to his funeral procession part there. When everybody's seated and they're getting ready to have the preacher talk and all that kind of stuff. And my mouth was on the floor. I couldn't believe that we were told that it was just going to be a military thing, and that's why I was told I couldn't sing Change by Blind Melon. I was told that it was not allowed because it was just going to be a military funeral, and there wasn't going to be anybody really giving any tributes or any, and standing up and saying anything or anything like that. It was just going to be a simple military funeral, and that was how it was going to be. I mean, I was a kid. I took that for what it was worth from the adults that were telling me those things, and I believed it, and come to find out it really wasn't true, and that that's something that stuck with me for quite a while. Anytime anybody talks to me about celebrating their 21st birthday and going out and having a good time, and that it's always in the back of my mind that my 21st birthday was spent in Warrensburg, Missouri, trying to remember that day never happened. And And you know, I just think that it's really disappointing that after all these years you find out that, you know, those things weren't, that's really not true. I mean, especially after me being in the military, I've seen quite a few processions where the military or the family members were allowed to, you know, do just the normal things that anybody else does at a funeral. You know, pay tribute to the person that's died, and you know, maybe you have somebody stand up and say something meaningful and that kind of thing. And you know, I never really forgave my grandmother for that. I know we had been estranged for a few years after the funeral, and after I got married to Julie, Julie was really a family. She was really family oriented, so it was very strange to her that my grandmother and I were not on speaking terms. So she really hammered home to me the fact that I needed to get her involved for Cameron and, you know, Cameron's life, and it would be important that his grandmother plays a part in his life. And so I thought about it, and I decided to, you know, bury the hatchet, I guess you say, and just kind of go with it. So we, you know, after that we had several encounters with my grandma. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I love my grandma. I have a lot of fond memories of her, and her house was, you know, that was one of our very favorite places to go as a kid, because there was always food there, you know, there was always enjoyable company, and she generally took good care of us. I'm not really sure what, you know, and maybe it was some of the pressures of, you know, her son dying and all the stress and that, but I really, you know, I really don't want to turn this into something negative. This is just what you know, I was told, and this is the truth of the story. And you know, if that rubs some people the wrong way, I want to say sorry, but I'm not sorry, because, you know, it's rubbed me the wrong way my whole life, and to deny it is only really just, I mean, just denying the truth, because that's really what it is. My dad did have a drug problem. You know, there'd be times where he was up in the middle of the night using a circular saw, and you know, on a school night, and I'd have to go out and tell him, you know, hey Dad, we got school tomorrow, you know, you got to keep it down, and you know, that kind of stuff was pretty commonplace for us in that house, and we just kind of got used to it, I guess. So all my friends in Warrensburg that know what happened that night and how things went down, I mean, I drove 4 hours straight from the funeral. When the funeral was over, I was pretty pissed off. I was very disappointed, and I was very, very upset. I mean, I just lost my dad, who was, you know, maybe not my very best friend, but we were very close. I mean, he always called me his #1 son. And that was a hard, difficult night. Not anything that a 21-year-old kid should have to suffer through, but yeah. Everyone's got it hard some way or another. I never thought my story was worse than anybody else's. I just felt like I was the guy that needed to work through it, no matter what was happening. So I just always worked through it. I mean, I've just always been a survivor, and I mean, I remember there was times often where my father didn't, you know, we didn't have food at my dad's house. My dad worked as a landscaper, and his work was really sporadic, so there were some times where it was more difficult for him to get food on the table for us. And you know, 3 kids, trying to feed 3 kids on a landscaper's sporadic diet was not easy. I remember there was this one period of time where there was literally the only thing to eat in the house was a half-open can of peas. And I remember we used to invite our friends over all the time, and we used to go out to our friend's house all the time, and we would you know, eat at their house, or We would tell them they could come over, but they had to bring food. You know, it was one of those things where you never went to my dad's house to expect to have some big banquet. Usually all the meals were, you know, spur of the moment. I'm going to go to the grocery store and get this and that and bring it back and eat. It wasn't like there was a lot of times where the pantry was stocked. He did go to the food pantry. After a while he found out that he could go to the food pantry. I remember the first time that he went to the food pantry. The night before we had gone, my brother and I, we usually stayed up late playing video games, and Brett and I had gone to sleep, and I got up in the morning a little bit before he did, and I remember going out to the kitchen, and there was food like on the table, and like boxes of food and crackers and cans of this and cans of that, and I just thought maybe I was still dreaming, and I woke up, I hadn't woke up yet, but I walked over to the refrigerator, and I opened the refrigerator, and I about fell over because it was just filled with food. I mean, there was more food in that refrigerator than I had ever seen. And so, you know, I wanted to just sit down and hog out, but I ran back to the, I don't think I ran. I went back to the bedroom where Brett was sleeping, and I shook him and woke him up. I remember he was on the top bunk, and I remember I was so excited that I said, "Brett, you gotta wake up. We got food. The refrigerator's full." And I remember I was so excited that the refrigerator was full that I had said the refrigerator's full. And forever after that, Brett and I always joked that, you know, anytime anybody said refrigerator, it was always, "You said it wrong, it's refrigerator." And that was one of those moments that we shared. But we went and hogged out together, and that was just kind of normal for that household where my dad was, because it was, we were broke. No two ways around it, man. We were broke, and I'm not talking about some people when, you know, we'd go over to my friend Jeff Lippert's house, and he would say, "Man, there's nothing to eat here. It just sucks." And he'd be looking through the closet, and there would just be mountains and mountains of food. And I remember thinking, "Dude, what are you talking about? There's all kinds of food to eat in here." And so, you know, those kind of things people took for granted was something that we had limited access to. So, now we didn't go hungry. I mean, you know, at my mom's house, it was quite a different story. I mean, they, you know, Don and my mom, they did pretty well and always had food, and we didn't really go without. But we did decide, I mean, we did take it upon ourselves to go stay with our dad, you know, during the summer especially, and I think that was because it was a free-for-all at my dad's, you know. I mean, we could get away with doing just about anything there because my dad was just cool with everything we did. I mean, from partying to, you know, having girls over, and just about all the things that dads are supposed to be a little more protective about, I guess. But everybody loved going over there, and we loved having everybody over there, and most of the time we were happy about it because people would come over with food. Yeah, Brett would like this. I really don't want to pull too much because then it's going to have a tendency to want to come up. I want it to be more relaxed when I'm laying it down. So this is where one of those holes is at. Last time I did the star patterns, and I did it all the way around, that it started sticking to itself. So I have to be careful when I do that. So I'll do this. Another star there. And then, like I said, I'll just run a piece in the middle there and kind of make it match up a little bit. It should be just fine. And then all these pieces here, I can use that for the holes if I'd like them to lay down a little better in there. This is a pretty cool pattern. I thought it was pretty neat when I saw it. It looks just like a comic book, a bunch of comic books put together, kind of like the dash panel, so it should be pretty cool. I don't know if I'm going to have to take the roller to this or not, but maybe might not be a bad idea just to kind of get it all locked in there. So now this is the back lift gate cover. So this is going to cover all the stuff that's on the back liftgate hatch. So now actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the other side. Okay, yeah, I think we're ready to set that last half down and get some touch-up pieces completed and finish this project up. So now I've got it. See, I really didn't like this idea. I did find my 27-year-old other can of spray adhesive. I hope it still works if I need it. Alright, so I'm just going to kind of do like I did before. I'm just going to grab it, roll it back on. And when we do it like this, you don't want to set it down, you don't want to lean on it too bad. You want to just kind of, especially get it in your creased areas where you know there's going to be some shrivel. Get out, you mouse. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim the excess around this side and the front like a 3-year-old with a pair of scissors. So when I'm standing at Walmart waiting for the lady to get done cutting this, there's like an old lady there and she says, "What are you gonna do with that?" I said, "Well, I'm gonna cover the tailgate panel inside my car." She says, "What?" She kind of leans in a little bit closer. She says, What? I said, I'm gonna take the panel off the inside of the hatch for my Fiat 500 and I'm gonna cover it in this material. She says, "Oh, well, that ought to be pretty cool." And I thought, yeah, that's what I was thinking. They're really nice. The one girl that was cutting the measuring and cutting the cloth, she was like, "Me and my boyfriend just watched Power Rangers last night." I'm just like, okay. Power Rangers, huh? I guess that's superhero-y. She was like, "We've seen Logan at the theaters, but we just finally got around to watching Power Rangers." And I'm thinking, yeah, Power Rangers isn't really a superhero movie, but okay, nice small talk, better than some I've had. Man, I don't want to cut that. I just said I don't want to cut that. Put the knife down! So we got it. I think that looks pretty badass. But I'm a super nerd, so I would think it looks pretty badass. So I am doing this stuff as kind of a like a portfolio, you know. I mean, if any of y'all want some of this stuff done, you can leave me a comment or a message, and I'd be happy to come take a look at your car and see if, you know, you might not want comics, but it would be just as easy to do this in a St. Louis Blues pattern, or the St. Louis Cardinals, or Miami Dolphins. You know, if you're a fan, I'd really like to maybe hear you leave me a comment in the comments there. Go Dolphins. So if you want some of this stuff done to your car, or if you're thinking about doing some and you need some tips or certainly what not to do, I could probably give you a list of what not to do's for any of the projects that I've done, because I did learn a few things along the way. And you can see that stuff will start to bunch up a little bit, but if you just give it a little tug, it'll flatten out. You don't want to cut that area, but you did anyway. No big deal. It's not rocket science, and it's not a NASA spaceship, so we will be okay. I had a lot of fun yesterday on my friend John Grzinski's backyard. He throws one hell of a fireworks party every year. He's done it every year that I worked at Patterson. He did it, and as far as I know, he's done it many years before that as well. And it is sick, man. I'm telling you, this guy, he does all the wows and the bangs of like the St. Charles downtown, without the traffic and without the massive crowds. and I really enjoyed it. I took a couple friends of mine, and they had a really good time too, and it was just fun all around. Great food, great friends out there. John and Mike are some of my very best friends since I moved back to St. Charles. Mike's constantly trying to get me to be more social and go out and do more things with the boys. And when I get to the back, I will actually spray some more on all the areas on the inside so that the stuff will wrap around, and then it'll kind of hold it in place too. So we're pretty well done with the top. I don't even want to touch it because my fingers are gross. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it over. Actually, I'm going to get my brown towel. How now, brown towel? The brown towel. The brown towel has got some spray adhesive on it from last time. So I'm going to use the other side, and look, it's going to stick to the table like magic. Some of my stories, I'm sure, are not going to be very entertaining to most of you, but I'm sure that if nothing else, I'll get a kick out of telling them. And like I said in one of my Facebook posts, this is a video series that I want to kind of leave behind for all my friends and family to enjoy after I've departed this world. Not that I have any plans to leave anytime soon or anything, but the story that I told on my Facebook page yesterday about kind of the reasoning behind me doing this video series is when my little brother passed away. He died of Marfan syndrome when he was 39 years old, and when he died, I really wanted to go back and read everything that he had posted, and I looked at every video that he posted and all the different things that he did, and I couldn't get enough. I wanted more, and I found myself really wanting to just dive into his Facebook pages to share moments and memories with him, and I really just couldn't get enough of it. And I always thought, your Facebook is strange that way, because it's really going to be a surprise to some people when they go back and look at their friends and family's Facebook pages and posts after they're gone, and wish there was more to their limited posts and stuff like that. So I thought it would be a good idea if I documented my life and some of the things that I do and some of the stories that have happened to me over the years. Is it loud enough? Look out! Here comes the Spider-Man. Oh yeah, 2 points.